What is going on, guys? Welcome back to Talking Jets with Tigo. My name is Tigo, and today we're going to be doing kind of a quick live stream. I didn't want to go super long. I am emotionally drained. I am physically drained. I am just drained. But we're still going to do Jets content. I still wanted to go live. I've missed the last couple of live streams. And that sucks. I like going live. I like talking to you guys. So we're going to go live. We're going to hang out. We're going to go over my quick lists and just kind of give you guys an update on what's going on. So as some of you may know, and before we get into the chat, before we dive into the list, some of you may know, obviously, if you watched one of my other videos talking about it, you'll know that me and my wife just went through a really hard time in our lives, obviously, when it came to the doctor telling us some bad news about our unborn son and all of this whatnot. And, you know, we were struggling with trying to figure out what the right answer was, what we were going to do, how we were going to handle things, and blah, 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 blah. And that's just where we were with our lives. And thankfully, we got some really good news earlier in the week that nothing's wrong with our baby. Everything's A-okay. But as you know, life doesn't always go according to plan. And the day after, we found out that our unborn son, baby Will, is what his name is going to be. When we found out that he was okay, that he was perfect, and all of that stuff, I got a call from my doctor saying that what's going on with me hasn't progressed well, and that things aren't looking up, and that, you know what, we might have to send me to a liver doctor. Just some of you may know, may not know, I have some liver issues. And then we go to the liver doctor, and the liver doctor says that the most likely scenario of what's going on is that I might have liver cancer, which was not something that you wanted to hear. And that was earlier on in this week. And this channel has been a great distraction throughout all of that. And this week has been nothing but seeing different doctors, running different tests, and doing a bunch of different things. And I can happily tell you as of right now, after running all of the tests, that the doctor feels confident and says that your boy is cancer free. He doesn't have any of that stuff, which is great. We're still not free and clear when it comes to, you know, the problems that I'm having with my liver. I can still have a multitude of different liver diseases, but we beat out the big C. That's the one that really, really sucked. But I hope this isn't to try to get any pity or to get any, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. That's not what this is about. One, I just want to be open and honest with my audience. You guys are such a big part of my life and what I do. I want you guys to be aware of some of these things that happen. But more, it's just more for you guys to kind of understand where I am mentally and, you know, physically, kind of a thing. I think you all have seen over the last couple of days, I've been spamming content on the channel, and the channel has been a great distraction while we were, you know, panicking and freaking out about all of this stuff. But ultimately, I'm okay. As of right now, everything is looking good. And we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about Jets, and that's exactly what we're going to do. So let's say hi to some people before we hop into today's topic of conversation, which is going to be, we're going to be going over 10 New York Jets players, 10 guys that are currently on the roster. And the reality is that of these 10 guys that I'm going to be talking about, and it's actually a little bit more than 10 because I have one or the other, one of the things that I want to talk about is, and you've maybe, if you've been watching some of my recent videos, you've seen this theme or this topic of conversation being brought up over and over and over again. And that's the fact that this year is really, really important, but so is next year. That the next 2 years are so important for the New York Jets, and that we need to be making decisions that are going to ultimately help us win a Super Bowl. That's where we're at. Right? So we're going to talk about 5 players that I honestly think at this point in time, I would extend. I would not let this go on into the season. I would have these conversations with these players' agents right now because I want them here for the next 2 years. Everything, all of these 10 players have something in common. That is, either they're on expiring deals, so this is the last year of their deal, or they're on a deal that we can get out from under at the end of this year without taking on a massive dead cap hit. But before we get onto that, let's say hi to some people. Harlan Abraham, always in the house. Thank you so much, Harlan. What's going on? How are you feeling today? K Yeti, happy Q day. Yes, it was a very happy Q day. Man, it feels good when you get to keep your best players, you know what I mean? Like, for so long as New York Jets fans, we watched not only us, our general managers and our front office and everyone like that fail us consecutively in terms of, you know, drafting the wrong players and doing those things. But when we did get guys that, like, we would like to have kept around or different situations like that, we never did. The one that sticks out to me in, like, my head is Leonard Williams. Like, it's not that he was so bad. He was a bust of a draft pick and, like, but just the timing wasn't there, and having to trade him away to the New York Giants and to see the success that he's having with the New York Giants kind of sucks, because I look at it and I go, why couldn't we have that level of success and have two Williamses right up the middle on our defensive line with Quinnen and with Leonard? And so, like, again, it feels really, really good to see, you know what, a first-round pick staying in New York and for a long time, right? It seems like we've had Quinnen for so long, and that's probably just because the seasons, they're like a marathon, not a sprint, you know? You got to get through a season recently as a New York Jets fan, but it feels so good knowing that for the next 4 or 5 years, we've got Quinnen Williams. My boys will be old enough to remember Quinnen Williams, because I remember the players that played when I was 4, 5, 6 years old, and that's what we're gonna see, right? My firstborn, Ben, he's 1 year old, so in 4 years he'll be 5. I remember watching, you know, the Curtis Martins of the world and Wayne and Chad and Vinny and, like, all of those guys back in the day, and it's really, really cool to have Quinnen Williams staying in New York. Johnny Jimenez, what's up, man? Johnny with the Rodgers MVP, Garrett Wilson offensive MVP, Sauce defensive MVP, Jets win the Super Bowl. Let's go. Love hearing it. We love you, Tigo. Thank you, Keokuk Lake Jet fan. It has been a rough couple of weeks, but we're on the up and up, and things are looking good. I'm very, very happy and excited for the future. Buffalo Jet fan in the house. What's going on? Kevin, I hope you're trying to get some sleep while the baby girl is sleeping, bud. Whenever she sleeps, you sleep. That is the biggest piece of advice I can give. Whenever she sleeps, you sleep. Done. She's okay. Don't worry about it. The first pick that Joe Douglas gave an extension to was Nathan Shepard. Yeah, absolutely. And it's again, not necessarily that it was like super needed, but, you know, I want to be able to keep around our elite players, and this just sets a good precedent. Hey, if you go out and you ball out, we're going to take care of you. You're going to stay on the Jets, and I love that, because I want to keep Sauce Gardner around for a long time. I want to keep Garrett Wilson around for a long time, and I want to keep Breece Hall around, and that makes a lot of really, really good thing. Dawn of a new era, 17-1, going to be here for a bit, 20 to boot, new culture, let's go. Absolutely. I love that. I love that. So let's hop in to today's list. We're going to go one Jet that we should probably extend sooner rather than later, and one Jet that, you know what, this is their last year as a New York Jet if I was Joe Douglas. And for me, the first name that should be on everybody's list, this guy needs to be extended. Why isn't he already extended? Keep this guy on this team for the long term, and that is DJ Reed. For those of you who don't know, DJ Reed is technically on an expiring deal. I believe that 2024 is a non-real year, but like whatever it is, no, 2024. So next year is a real year, but that doesn't change the fact that I don't want to risk it. The guy just had one of his best seasons ever as a New York Jet. He is such a key and integral part to being a part of this defense and what we do. We all know that the defense runs through Quinnen Williams. We've all seen the stats that have been coming out from 31st to 1st in terms of sack percentage when it comes to when Quinnen Williams is on the field and not on the field. But a big thing that helped our defensive line be so good last year is not just the absolute dominance from guys like Quinnen Williams, but it was the fact that wide receivers were not open. Sauce, MC2, and DJ Reed were unstoppable. These guys were phenomenal for the football team, and I want to keep the band together. Extend DJ Reed. It makes sense. Give him a longer-term deal. Right now, we've got void years until 2027. I'd be cool with giving him a contract until 2027. Make it happen. He deserves to get paid. He deserves to be on this football team. Let's do it. Now, this one's going to hurt my heart. Now, here's the thing. The players that are on the Jets should not even entertain extending or doing all those things. These are not players that I think are bad. These are not players that I think suck or anything like that. Actually, with most of these players, I think that they are exceptional New York Jets. For 4 of the 5 of these guys, I would love to be on the New York Jets beyond this year. The reality is good football teams cut good players, and good football teams sometimes can't re-sign their good players, and we should ride it out one last year with these guys, but we should let them know that this will be their last year with the New York Jets. Show up, show out, so that you can go and get a free agent contract. That's the goal. And the first person on this list is Bryce Hall. Bryce Hall is more than adequate when it comes to being a backup cornerback. And my belief is that at least on like 15 or 16 teams in the NFL, Bryce Hall is probably a starting cornerback. Now, he's not a CB1 by any stretch of the imagination, and he shouldn't be, but he's at least a CB2 for a lot of teams out there. I would be willing to bet that the Pittsburgh Steelers would love a guy like Bryce Hall to partner with the new rookie that they just drafted. I forget his name. So again, this is not me saying that Bryce Hall is bad. I want to trade him. He sucks. No, it's the opposite. I actually like Bryce Hall. But when you've got a good team, we've got to find the young talent to fix that, because our players are going to get expensive sooner rather than later. And Bryce Hall is probably going to out-contract himself in terms of coming back to the New York Jets, which sucks, but that's the reality. Moving forward, we're going to move on to the next player that's going to stay or go, someone that I would extend right now, make sure that they're on this team beyond this year, and one player that I would let go. And I'm going to go on to, and this is a little bit of a weird one because I'm going to let it be a choose your own adventure when it comes to the audience, but I would like to keep one of the 2 tight ends that are on expiring deals in terms of Tyler Conklin or CJ Uzomah. I think that Jeremy Ruckert is going to be tight end 1 for this team sooner rather than later. He is going to blow up on this scene, but I like the idea of partnering a young superstar tight end in the making in Jeremy Ruckert with a guy who's done it and has been around the league for some time and done it at a moderately successful rate. If it was up to me, I would like to keep CJ Uzomah, but CJ Uzomah is on the wrong side of 30, and Tyler Conklin is actually only 28, so keeping him around for another 2 or 3 years would make a little bit of more sense, where if you keep CJ Uzomah around for another 2 or 3 years, now you're pushing a guy into 32, 33 years old, where with Tyler Conklin, you would get him out of the building at 30, and that would be kind of the perfect situation. But I prefer CJ Uzomah. He's one of my favorite players, just off the field and on the field with what he's willing to do. But if it were up to me, I would lock down one of these tight ends beyond their expiring deals and what's happening, and make sure that they're here for the next couple of years. And honestly, look at getting rid of the other tight end. There are trade possibilities. There are cut possibilities. There are things that the New York Jets can do to save money on both of these guys next year, and I don't think that both of them can afford to be on this roster. So That is going to be my first player. You get to pick which one you get to keep and which one you get to send away, which is kind of a double dip, right? Because I'm also going to bring up another name in the send away pile. Before we get that, let's say what's up to some people in the chat. Car Fox, cut Solomon Thomas. How many 256-pound DTs in the NFL? I don't disagree with you. I said this in the video, I think earlier today, Carfox, where I was talking about the fact that there are still a bunch of interior defensive linemen available in free agency that if I was the New York Jets, I would go and give a call. Can you convince... He's more of an edge rusher, but at this age, maybe not. Can you convince J.J. Watt to come out of retirement? Not really, probably not. But look at guys like Akeem Hicks, Matt Ioannidis, Chris Wormsley, Linval Joseph, Ndamukong Suh. These are all guys that can play in a limited role. That's exactly what we're looking for. We're not looking for interior defensive lineman 1. We're looking for interior defensive lineman 4. And so in a year that's so important and in a year where like outside of Quinnen Williams, I don't trust any of the guys on the interior of the defensive line to hold it down and to get the job done and to do the right thing. With that being the case, you know what? Here are some guys that are out there. And the best part about all of these guys, one, I think that they produce at a higher level than what Solomon Thomas does. And their contracts are going to be in like the $2 million range. So that's what I'm thinking. That's where I'm at. That's what I would do. But yeah. DJ Reed is a dog. Love that he played as well as he did on the outside when media wanted to peg him in just the slot. I was one of those guys, GVH, where I was really concerned about the fact that, like, is he going to be able to play outside? He's played outside in his career. And remember, we brought him in. This was before we had Sauce, and this was before all of that situation. And I was just like, look, we brought in DJ Reed. What does that mean for Bryce Hall? What does that mean for Brandon Echols? I thought our cornerback room was actually kind of okay. And then there's Michael Carter II. It's one of those things where you go and you say, hey, what's going to happen there? And for him to also, don't forget, he lost his father last year. And to see him perform in spite of all that, and not just perform, but perform at the level that he did, absolutely phenomenal. You love to see it. Kuntz will be the Mercedes Lewis for Aaron Rodgers. I think CJ Uzomah has more of a likelihood of being that type of guy. CJ Uzomah and Aaron Rodgers have been connecting on the field very consistently, and it's like a revitalized CJ Uzomah. Whenever I see the tapes coming out and whenever I talk to the people that have access to those trainings and stuff like that, they're all saying the same things. Jeremy Ruckert looks absolutely incredible. Guy is going to absolutely explode onto the scene, but also, more importantly, CJ Uzomah and Aaron Rodgers are clicking, and they've gotten pretty used to each other. Uzomah's a better player. He doesn't drop the ball. Like I said, I want to keep Uzomah. Worth the fight. Dream scenario. Max Mitchell and Carter Warren are the starting offensive tackles in 2024. 2 mid-round picks on cheap contracts, freeing up money for Aaron Rodgers' cap next year and money for re-signing Sauce and Garrett Wilson. How amazing would that be? I think the more likely scenario is that it's either going to be Max Mitchell or Carter Warren on the right side with a Mekhi Becton playing on the left side. I think that would be the dream scenario. Mekhi Becton is not going to be able to ask for a ton of money, but if he can play well enough this year and stay healthy enough this year to earn the ability to actually get an extension from the New York Jets, I think that should be what everybody should want. When he is on the field, he is one of the most dominant players on the offense. He is arguably one of our best offensive linemen when healthy, and that's including guys like Elijah Vera Tucker and all of those things. So for me, in an ideal situation in 2024, you have Mekhi Becton and Elijah Vera Tucker back on the left side, and then obviously, y'all know I'm a Max Mitchell guy. I've got if you're a member of the channel, if you want to join the Tigo Navy, you know You can drop the Max Mitchell love in the chat. It's awesome. He's my boy, and I hope that he can win the right tackle spot. But that to me would be a dream scenario. But you're absolutely right. Having offensive tackles that you can trust on the cheap on the football team that you got in the later rounds, you didn't have to spend that really high level draft capital to go out and get, absolutely works out in the benefit of everybody. But you have to be careful when you go down this pathway, because you don't want to end up like some teams that we might be very, very intimately familiar with as New York Jets fans, and that is look at like the Miami Dolphins trying to fit in Liam Eichenberg, a second round pick, doesn't really work out, hasn't been playing all that well. Look at the Buffalo Bills and I forget his name, he's so bad, the Spencer Brown third round pick experiment not working out for them. Again, there are a lot of situations where having a late round pick that can play is so important, and I love that, but I think the reality is we're more likely to see one of those two guys in Max Mitchell or Carter Warren playing on the right side with a Mekhi Becton on the left. No way Sue is coming. Rodgers hates his guts. Lots of bad blood there. But yeah, but I don't know if that's bad blood, like legitimately. Again, when they were playing against each other, when he was in Chicago and when, Aaron was in Green Bay, like, you have to put that stuff aside when you get onto a football team, and they're on opposite sides of the football field. So it's not like they're going to be interacting all that much. Again, I'm not saying Ndamukong Suh is the guy. No, Ndamukong Suh never played for the Bears, did he? I don't care. Either way, I'm not saying go and get Ndamukong Suh. I'm just saying there are interior defensive linemen that are out there. And I think they're better than Detroit. That's what it was. Thank you, Jay Claus. I think you got to be able to set that stuff aside when you're going after a ring. But that's just me. I feel like keeping Solly around for his good character in the locker room. I think so too. I love the idea of that. But Xavier, this year and next year are so important. We can't have feel-good stories for this 53-man roster. Every single spot has to be a competition. Every single spot has to be earned. And if the guy, you can't trust him to come in and play with right now, Solly is that type of guy. I can't trust him to come in and play for meaningful snaps. Then he's got to go. We got to find a replacement for him. Now, if we go out and we bring in a guy like Matt Ioannidis, who is the guy that I would like to bring in, or a guy like Chris Wormley, who is another guy I would like to bring in, and they'll lose the job to Solomon Thomas legitimately, that's a different conversation. But right now, there is no competition for that number 4 interior defensive tackle spot, and there should be. Every single last position on this football team should be a competition. Wide receiver 6 should be a competition. Tight end 4 should be a competition. Running back 3 or 4, depending on how many you think we're going to carry, should be a competition. Offensive tackles 3 and 4 should be a competition. Cornerback 4 and 5 should be every single position needs to be a legitimate competition for what's going to happen on this football team, because you are one injury away from having a position of plenty be a position of need, and I want to have the best available depth possible in a year that's so important. Love the comments. Buff and Tigo were tight. I love seeing the shared brotherhood on streams. Thanks, K Eddie. I love that dude. Sue is in Detroit. Yeah, I don't want Solly on here. His character doesn't replace good play. I'm with you. Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's keep the list going. I was just saying I think that's why they keep him. Oh, I get it. No, absolutely. One of the reasons that they keep him on here is because he's a phenomenal locker room guy. He is one of the leaders of that defense in terms of like a moral leader, not necessarily an on-field leader. But we all saw that this team kept Nathan Shepard around because he was a workout warrior, and it's just like, come on, man, I don't care. Like, on the field, results is what matters. Clemens, Woods, Q, Quentin Jefferson, and the foundation Why add an interior? Well, because Michael Clemens isn't an interior edge rusher, in an interior defensive lineman. He's an edge rusher. Al Woods doesn't necessarily fit the scheme of what this interior defensive line wants to do. I don't know what Al Woods is going to do for this football team. The New York Jets, and more specifically Robert Saleh, hasn't used a guy like Al Woods in years, where you're looking at run-stuffing interior defensive linemen. I have no idea what his role is going to be, if he's going to have a high role or a bad role, and that's fine. And I have no problems with Quentin Jefferson, but we all saw last year what happened to our interior defensive line and our defensive line as a whole when we lost Quinnen Williams for those couple of snaps in games. Our sack percentage goes down. We can't create pressure anymore. And I'm not saying if we lose Quinnen Williams, knock on wood, it is one of the worst things that happens to this football team. But we all know that the New York Jets use a rotation. Quinnen Williams is not going to be out there every single rep. But even with that being said, tell me that you feel totally confident with a trio of interior defensive linemen when Quinnen Williams isn't running, of Quentin Jefferson, Al Woods, and Solomon Thomas, because those are our interior defensive linemen. I understand that they want to run JFM and Michael Clemens inside more, but that is on clear passing situations. That's what they've said. You're not going to put Michael Clemens in there on a run stopping down. You're not going to put Michael Clemens in there, maybe on the goal line, because that's just that length and his strength. But you get what I'm saying. The idea here is not, hey, we're fine. But Buffalo Jet fan said something to me when we were talking about the OBJ scenario, because he was a guy who was kind of in favor of getting Odell Beckham Jr. He didn't want Odell. He didn't say anything like that, but he said, I understand why they would go out and get him. And he said something that had stuck with me really, really, really hard, and that is, good teams don't stop at what they need. And that really kicked me in the butt. Yes, we've got a really, really good defensive line. That doesn't mean it can't get better. I even talked about possibly looking at the edge position when it comes to free agents. There are a ton of edge players that you can maybe go out and get. Can you trade a guy like Bryce Huff? Can you trade a guy, in these situations? I'm not saying to go do it, but there are some names of some veterans and some guys out there that can still play at a high level. You look at your Robert Quinns, your Yannick Ngakwe's, your Jadeveon Clowney's, your Melvin Ingram's, your Justin Houston's. There are Kyler Van Noy. There are guys out there who can still play, who are not going to have a massive cap hit. I'm not saying go and get an edge rusher, but if you can push the competition, you should make this team better. Love the comments, though. They're trying to kick Clemens inside, right? That's why he bulked up. They're trying to use him inside more. Yes, that's one of the reasons he did bulk up, but I don't know if his skill set right now is truly that of an interior defensive lineman. Studs will be studs. Woods and Jeff are studs, two of my favorite signings. We are deep, buddy. Yes, but again, it's a rotation, man. Do you feel 100% confident on a 3rd and 3 if Quinnen Williams isn't there, of Quentin Jefferson and Al Woods? I don't. Al Woods doesn't create any type of penetration. If it's 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, and you need that sack and Quinnen can't go, where are you going to get that pressure coming up the middle? It's hard to totally believe in a guy like, again, you want your best players out there. You want your best pass rushers. You want your best players. And again, I'm not saying I'm worried about those two guys, and I'm not even saying we need to replace those two guys. That's not the point. What I'm saying is Solomon Thomas does not live up to the standard of the defensive line, in my opinion, and there are guys out there who can. That being said, let's continue on with the list. The next player that is probably their last year as a New York Jet and probably isn't going to be on this team beyond this year, and to be honest, the New York Jets should not look into keeping this player beyond this year, unfortunately, is Bryce Huff. I love Bryce Huff, man. The dude is absolutely explosive. But the problem is I think that he wants a more expanded role on the edge, and he wants to play first and second down. And I don't think necessarily that he has the ability to do that. And I don't think he has that skill set. Now, as a pure third down pass rusher, he is one of the best in the NFL. On second and long, third and long, and in those types of situations, he is absolutely lethal. But the reality is he is going to play himself into a contract that the New York Jets are unable to afford. And here's the thing. The next player that I'm going to talk about, one of the players that I think that we should extend now, is also one of the reasons that I don't think that Bryce Huff is in the cards for staying on this team beyond this year. We should use him this year, really inflate his numbers, let him and help him go get paid by another football team. But as of right now, it's kind of hard to say, you know what? Bryce Huff has a spot on this team beyond this year. And that's just the way that the business is done. And I hate that's the way that the business is done. But that's that. But moving on to a player that I think that we should probably look at extending before he does the same thing to the New York Jets, which is play to a level that's going to outperform the contract that he might be worth right now, is a guy like Carl Lawson. I know that this might be too soon to say, and after his performance from last year, it's hard to argue that keeping Carl Lawson on this team beyond this year should be a priority for the New York Jets. But I absolutely believe that he will be on this team, that he should be on this team for the next couple of years, because I think he is absolutely going to dominate the football field this year. They always talk about year 2 after the injury being the year where you get your explosiveness back. And last year, while he looked strong and while he looked powerful, he didn't look explosive. And if he's gotten that step back, watch out. Carl Lawson can really shake things up in a positive way for this football team. And I think keeping him around and having a 4-deep edge room position of Carl Lawson, Jonathan Franklin Myers, Jermaine Johnson, and Will McDonald will absolutely be lethal. So, for me, keep him around if you can. The next player that I think is not long for this team, I think this is a player that the only reason he made this list is because I'm starting to get some DMs. I'm starting to get some texts. I'm starting to hear this out in the Jet space of, is there a spot? Is there a place for maybe keeping a player around, especially with how weak we are at the offensive tackle position? Is there a place in this world for keeping a guy like Duane Brown? And I think that the answer to that question is no. We need to get younger and cheaper at the offensive tackle position, not older and more expensive. And while I absolutely appreciate what Duane Brown did for the football team last year, playing with one arm and playing relatively well with one arm, but more importantly, what I do believe he's going to do for this football team this year, all of that being said, this should be, honestly, Duane Brown's last year with the New York Jets and probably his last year in the NFL, if we're being honest. And the only reason he's on this list instead of maybe some other guys is because of the fact that, you know what? I heard some people talking about it, and I think that that's crazy. Duane Brown shouldn't be on here. Now we're going to move on to our last 2 Jets that we should re-sign and our last 2 Jets that we should not even entertain the idea of re-signing. But before we do that, let's answer some comments. I remember for a solid day and a half, there was rumors we were looking into Yannick, and I never heard about it again. Yeah, I remember that too, that we were looking at possibly bringing in a Yannick Ngakoue, all of that stuff, and then it just never materialized into anything. I think what happened more than likely, Xavier, is that we called his agent and said, hey, what is he looking for money? And then his agent leaked it out to the media, and then the Jets just killed it right there to try to drive business for his client. It makes a ton of sense, but the New York Jets are not the team that you do that with. We don't like it when things are getting leaked. We run a tight ship here in New York. Do that somewhere else, and I think that's where it died. K Yeti got it. Woods had a field day with us last game. I'm just happy he's in green and white. Absolutely. Totally understand. And I think that if we can find a way to utilize his skill set properly, watch out, because we're going to have a really, really, really good defense and a really good interior defensive lineman. And I think that Al Woods can help cover up some of the deficiencies that we have in the linebacker room, because that's obviously our biggest concern. Moving on, let's talk about the last two players. I'm going to do the last two players that we should let go and that we should not, that we should either let go at the end of this season or let them know that this is going to be their last season with the New York Jets. And that is quarterback Justin Hardy. And calling him a cornerback just doesn't feel right. Dude is not a cornerback for this team. He is a special teamer, and the reality is that paying a special teamer $2.5 million doesn't make sense. I understand that the special teams, he is the quarterback of that unit, and we had a very good special teams unit last year, but Boyer has to earn his keep. Boyer has to earn his salary. He is a special teams coordinator, and if you can't create special teams players out of the depth of the rest of the roster, that is on you that is your failures as a special teams coordinator, not the front office. We should be able to get studs and players that can actually play on offense and defense and not have to have specialists who can only play special teams. I want to be able to know that every single person on the 53-man roster for the position that they are listed at, if it came down to they can play, they can play. Justin Hardy isn't even listed on some depth charts as a cornerback. He's literally listed as a special teamer. That means that the New York Jets are forced to carry one less defensive back because of the play of Justin Hardy. And while, yes, he did just go to a Pro Bowl as a special teamer and he did all of that stuff, I cannot be wasting a roster spot on a special teamer and only a special teamer. Let him ride one last year, but this year Brant Boyer needs to focus on finding Justin Hardy's replacement, whether that's a guy like Hamza Nasruddin, whether that's a guy like Brandon Eccles, whatever, Jamien Bernard-Converse, whatever it is, go and find the special teams replacement for Justin Hardy because he should not be on this roster beyond this year. And sadly, this one hurts my heart. He is one of my favorite Jets, but it's time for us to shore up the linebacker room beyond this year. And it's time for us to look at the CJ Mosley contract, the CJ Mosley situation, and to say this is his last year as a New York Jet. We cannot be paying $21 million for a linebacker, especially next year. He will be a 32-year-old linebacker who very clearly is playing out of scheme, out of position, and has lost a step. CJ Mosley is hands down the best tackler that we have on this football team. Easily, hands down, is not even close. But we need to get younger at the linebacker position. And here's where I get the biggest kick out of this, or this is the biggest thing that's kicking him out the door, is that Robert Saleh, one of the things that he was sold to us as is a linebacker whisperer, that he can go and create linebackers and coach up linebackers and get these guys to play at a high level. Well, it's time to put your money where your mouth is, Coach Saleh. Go and find us some relatively young linebackers who can come in and play. We know that we're not going to have a first-round pick next year because we're going to make the Super Bowl, but that's not the point. I do not care. Go and find a second-round linebacker that can come in and play. Go and play Jamien Sherwood in the middle linebacker position. Whatever it is that you need to do, make it happen because we cannot afford 2 back-to-back years of $21 million of CJ Mosley, especially when if we cut him, we can save $11 million or $17 million. If we do it as a post-June 1st designation. That hurts my heart because I love CJ Mosley as the captain of that defense, but it might be time to move on. And now we're going to go to the last 2 players that we should keep. Now, I'm going to put a massive asterisk on this player. A massive asterisk. And he's on this list because I think that the New York Jets should extend him. Because in a limited role, I think that he can absolutely play exceptionally well. But I also think, can find his replacement in the second round of the draft. Especially in next year's draft. So I'm kind of torn here. Do you keep the commodity that we know that can play well when healthy? Or do you let this player walk and try to find their replacement in the draft as a cheap rookie? And that's Corey Davis. Corey Davis is obviously on the last year of his deal. $11 million going to be made this year. But he is a prime candidate to get an extension. Corey Davis is only 28 years old. I would argue that he's the second best wide receiver that we have on this football team after Garrett Wilson. And the only problem that we have with Corey Davis is his health. But if we can reduce his role for this football team, is there a place in this world for Corey Davis to stay on this team? I think that there is. I would do that move. Now, again, this year's wide receiver class that's coming out for the draft seems to be like it could be a deeper wide receiver class. And if that's the case, if there are some wide receiver 2s and 3s that maybe we can find in the second round, that might be something worth taking the risk and saying, you know what? Let's just let the draft go. Let's just let Corey Davis walk and keep him. Corey Davis is another one of those players that you can land him on either side of this list. But personally, I think Corey Davis is a really good wide receiver, and we just have to figure out why he keeps getting these injuries. And if we can keep him on the team and available longer by reducing his role, by playing a guy like Allen Lazard a little bit more and having that, giving him that reduced role, I think would absolutely be worth keeping Corey Davis on this football team. And last but not least, the player that I think that the New York Jets should extend, the player that I think that the New York Jets should keep around is a guy who, ironically, the New York Jets have never seen a single game day snap from this player, but I think he deserves to be on this team. I think he is good enough to be on this team. There's a reason we went out to go get this guy. I know that you know that we both agree that this position group isn't ready. I think it's time for the New York Jets to engage with contract extension talk and renegotiations with Chuck Clark. I would love to keep him on this team beyond this year. I don't think his contract is going to be all that much. I don't think it's going to be a problem when it comes down to availability next year. He got injured so early on in the process. Not only do I think that he's going to get fully healthy and fully ready, I'm concerned about this safety room long term. We don't have the players to do it and to play at this position at a relatively high level, and getting a guy like Chuck Clark, who we know can play exceptionally well and only got traded because the Ravens went and drafted a linebacker in the first round, but they decided to play him at safety. That's the only reason he got traded, and it's the only reason that we got him for a 7th round pick. They were doing him a solid. Chuck Clark, I would love to keep you on this football team. And that's the whole list. That's everybody. Players that I think that we should keep. I'll go over the list again one more time. Give me a second. Hey, look what I found. Baby Binky. Corey Davis, DJ Reed, Tyler Conklin, or CJ Uzomah, Chuck Clark, and Carl Lawson are all the players that I would have conversations about extending now, and players that I would inform, hey, this is probably your last year as a New York Jet now, so that, one, we can get these guys to ball out and perform out so that they can get new contracts, but so that there's no expectations or no surprises at the end of the year is Bryce Huff, Bryce Hall, Justin Hardy, CJ Mosley, and Dwayne Brown. What do you guys think? Let's look at the comment section. I would have loved to see Saleh with Henley. I was mad when he went. Yeah, that would have been a great matchup, man. Can you imagine Deion Henley on this team? And with his speed and athleticism, you can find a good linebacker in round 4. Absolutely, but I don't want a good linebacker, Harlan. I want a great one. And for me, the priorities, and it is way too early to talk offseason, but for me, the priorities going into the next offseason is going to be linebacker and offensive tackle. Those are the priorities for me. And that's unless we see exceptional performances out of guys like Max Mitchell, Carter Warren, and Mekhi Becton. But I think a priority number 1 for me next year is definitely going to be linebacker, and then like in a tier list of like safety, wide receiver, and like offensive tackle. But yeah, for me. Problem with Corey Davis is his availability. Absolutely right, Harlan. Absolutely right, Harlan. CD is going to be fine this year. Putting it out in the universe, we deserve a complete season with a real QB. Absolutely. K. Eddie, that's why I'm saying I would love to extend him. This is why I would love to keep him on this team beyond this year. Corey Davis has never had a top 10 quarterback in his career. Dude went from Marcus Mariota to Ryan Tannehill to Sam Darnold to Zach Wilson to like Joe Flacco to Chris Streveler. Like, dude's never had a quarterback that could hit the wide side of a barn, throw the ball at him. And yes, he's gotten injured, but like there's also no incentive, and this might be a different problem for a different video that we could talk about. He's had no incentive to push through the pain to get onto the field because it's not like the quarterback's going to hit him anyway. Why would you play at 90% if you're not going to get the ball thrown at you? You know what? Let me get 100% so that I can at least try to be helpful to my team. So it's a weird situation. This is a great comment, K. Eddie. This is a great comment. Huff and Hall, Douglas could probably trade during the season. Here's the thing. I don't want to get rid of any of these players, right, Harlan? This is such an important year. Keep the good players on our team. But I don't want to let these guys walk and go play on another team that maybe the New York Jets might run into in a playoff run or, God forbid, the Super Bowl, and then Bryce Huff is coming off the sidelines and sacking Aaron Rodgers because we traded him at the deadline. Keep the stuff. We don't need the draft picks. We don't need the draft capital. Keep our good players. Like I said earlier in the stream, you are one injury away from a position of strength being a position of need. Let's not risk it. Okay, Eddie, I love you too, dude. I love you too. Alrighty. We went for a little bit longer than I was expected. 46 minutes. Thank you guys for hanging out. I'm going to go rest. I'm going to go relax now that I can breathe, now that I got some good news, now that I got some stuff. But it feels good to not have to, if you don't know what I'm talking about, go watch the beginning of the stream. But like, I feel like 10 pounds lighter. You know what I mean? I feel like I can finally breathe. And that's something that I think is very important, is just being able to like just sit down, relax, close my eyes, and not worry that I'm going to leave my wife with 2 kids by herself. You know, that's a good thing to be able to think about, to not have to worry that I might not see my kids grow old and all that stuff. It feels good to be alive. And I thank you guys for hanging out. One last comment by Xavier Garcia. Everyone seems to be panicking over not having Quan, but I feel like this might be a good sign that they have faith in Jamian, and that he's shown he can play. Remember, Xavier, that the goal was always to have Jamian Sherwood be the starting middle linebacker. And the reality is that Jamian Sherwood and Quan Alexander do not play the same position. The reality is, in my opinion, is that the thing that killed Quan coming back to this team is the extension of Quincy Williams. Quincy and Quan play the same role as that Sam linebacker. And what we should hope for is that Jamian Sherwood, one, is ready to play the way that the New York Jets and our defensive coaching staff wanted him to play when we drafted him. I don't know if you guys remember this, but at the beginning of the year, on his rookie year, as a safety converted to linebacker, he was starting at middle linebacker over C.J. Mosley. C.J. Mosley was actually playing the weak side linebacker. Jamian had the sticker on the helmet, and he was being the quarterback of that defense. And I think that that's very telling. And I do think that Jamian Sherwood, 1, is ready to go, and 2, should be our middle linebacker week 1. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. If you like the content, don't forget to hit the like button. A really easy way to support the channel is to hit the subscribe button. I appreciate every single one of you for hanging out. Hey, if you're watching this after the fact, leave a comment. What do you guys think of my list? Did I go too crazy? Did I leave a player off it? Let me know in the comment section below. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. Remember, we'll be live next Friday, back on the channel at 9:30. I'm going to go relax. I'm going to go take a bath or do something. Go on, get